All right, welcome to our first assignment. Our first assignment is making lines. In other words, it's about lines and how lines are used. In this instance, we're going to be using lines to describe the contour of an object. Okay, I have an ebony pencil, a kneaded eraser, I got a plastic eraser, a little sharpener, and a couple ebony pencils handy. So, now, if I said draw this apple, you have a couple of choices to make. You can just draw the apple. You can say, well, I know what an apple looks like. I'm going to draw an apple, right? So you can draw an apple going like this and like that. And okay, there's an apple, right? Put a little stem in it. All right, look at that, an apple, all right? Now, that's a rather generic line drawing of an apple. I didn't spend I didn't really look at that. I knew it was there, and that's sort of my model. And this gets us to the idea, I could draw this sort of generic, the idea of an apple, or I could draw that apple. And it isn't about right or wrong, it's really about content. In other words, what are you trying to say in your drawings? A drawing is another way of communicating ideas. So what idea are you trying to communicate about an apple, for example? So here it's generic, it's just about apples. It could be any apple, right? It's somewhat of a general idea of an apple, right? But I have an apple in front of me. And let's say I want to draw that apple, okay? And this gets us into the more of a specific idea. And again, it changes the content. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a very simple technique that's referred to as sighting. So I'm going to draw this apple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually measure it. I'm going to take this pencil, hold it, close one eye, hold my arm out in front of me, and touch the pencil against one side of the apple. For me, it's at the left side of the apple. What I'm doing is I'm giving my eye a straight edge against which I'm measuring the shape of the apple. So I can see what shape does it have. All right, I can see where it kind of rounds out. So in other words, on the left side of the apple, it kind of bows out like this and curves in like that. Place it against the bottom of the apple. I can see it comes down like this and then up again like that. I place it against the top of the apple. It's a little bit higher on the left and lower on the right like that. And then I'll place it against the right side of the apple. And then it comes in like that. So what I did is I measured each side of this apple I'm looking at, rather misshapen. And I'll look at it and say, do I like it? Does it work? Does it describe the apple? I might check my measurements and decide this can come in a little bit more on this side here. All right, so which gets us to what I would call a very basic idea about drawing or about making art, which is a good artist is a good editor. Okay, it's the same with anything like writing or any discipline. You don't just put stuff out there and that's it. You always edit it. You revise, as an English teacher I know says. Okay, so there we go. That is not the generic apple I drew to begin with, but it's that's that apple sitting in front of me. On the top of the apple, there's a little dip in the top of it. I can measure it. I can see where it lies in relationship to the top of the apple, what shape it has. Okay, like that. Now there's no stem on this apple, or there is. It's very small, so I'm going to sneak it in here. I like stems on apples. You ever look at Cézanne's paintings? He turns his apples upside down. All right, so there you go. So there's the basic use of the line. The other thing I can describe here is the shadow. There's a shadow coming out. I have light coming in the window. I have a shadow on the right side, and I can measure that shadow. So in other words, how long or what shape does that shadow have? It's the same with drawing the apple. I can measure it, which means I can actually measure the width of the apple. I'll put the tip of my pencil against the right side of the apple, move my thumb up to the left, and that measurement is the size of my apple. If I get further back, measurement gets smaller. If I get closer, that measurement gets bigger. It doesn't matter, because I'm going to measure it here. I'm going to measure the length of the shadow. So the shadow I have is about as long as the apple is wide, which means if my apple here is that long, like so, maybe that's 5 inches, my shadow is going to be another 5 inches. It's going to come out from below the apple, right about here. So what I'm now doing is I'm measuring the parameters of the shadow. I'm placing my pencil against the back edge of the shadow where it comes out from under the apple, comes out right about here. Against the bottom of the shadow, it dips down slightly below the bottom of the apple. And as I said, I measured the width of the apple. My shadow is as long as the apple, so if it's that long, it's there. All right, and then I'm going to measure where the apple comes out from underneath, under here, and it comes out right about there. So these 4 lines define the parameters of the shadows, and shadows are important. I think shadows tell us 3 important things about an object. It tells us about the direction of the light, tells us about the type of light, whether it's distant or close, it's harsh or soft, moonlight, sunlight, and it tells us about the shape of the object. And without the shadow, your object is floating there on the paper. So I'm going to, within these 4 parameters, I'm going to measure, I'm going to put my shadow. So my shadow does that, and you'll notice with the shadow, even though I'm just describing it with a line, starts to make a connection. It starts to create a broader context for the apple. It starts to tell us something more about than just an apple floating on the paper, okay? Now, another use for lines is to define value. So I have, you can light on this side of the apple, shadow on this side. I can begin to use lines. So I can use lines to describe value. So in other words, I can use contour lines like this. They cross, or hatching lines, and I can cross hatch them with another set of lines. Same up here, I have light coming in like that, so I have a shadow here. Now these lines, I made them straight, but if I want them to do double duty, I can curve them. So in other words, I could have done this. I could have curved the lines. So not only describing value, but also describing the shape of the object. They conform to its contour. So what I would call contour hatching. So I can do that too. So again, another use of lines. Okay. So there's some basic ideas about using lines. What I'm going to do in your assignment page, I'm going to give you a number of different assignments to do with lines. Okay, it'll be about doing contour. I want you to do some contour lines. I'm going to have you do some blind contour lines. A blind contour line is where you're actually not looking at your paper. So if I'm doing a blind contour line of that apple, I'm looking at the apple only. And I'm going very slowly. Okay, I'm going to go like this and pretend my eye is just going over the edge of the apple. So what's the purpose of that? Well, the idea is for you to study the contour of an object rather than being so focused on the drawing itself. And your drawing is immaterial, it's irrelevant. I'm not going to have a very good drawing here, but the idea is to really pay attention to the shape of the object. And you shouldn't rush through these. You should go very slowly, very slowly. Study the contour of the object, the shape of the object. All right, there we go. So there you go. Now, of course, it's very different from that, but I really now am getting a better idea of what that apple looks like, because developing your observational skills is key. There's 3 basic skills you need to develop in drawing. One is your motor skills, okay? You know, when your arm says make a straight line, you make a straight line. When it makes a curved line, it knows how to make a curved line. The second is the understanding the medium you're working with. Every medium has its characteristics. And the third skill is your eye, seeing things. What are you really seeing? And doing blind contour lines like this begins to help you create that skill. Okay, that's important. All right, so there's some basic ideas. Look at your assignment page for your assignments. Assignments are always due the next week, okay? And you're going to be putting your assignments on the discussion page, which I'm also going to talk with you about at our first class. All right, thank you, everyone. Practice your drawing. Remember what I said, experience is the best teacher.